Welcome to our first volunteer orientation of the 2020 season. This is a Hopes Harvest event. I'm glad to see everybody. It looks like we've got 43 participants on right now, and we had about 90 registered, which is amazing. So exciting, and shows a lot of interest for gleaning this season, which is really great. You all have been muted upon entry, just so you know, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but we're gonna try and hold on questions until the end, and you can always put questions in the chat window, but until then, please do keep yourself muted, just so we don't get background noise. And I'm going to go ahead and start the slideshow now. Oh, I'm going to try and get it into full screen mode. There we go. All right. And just like I was saying, Melanie, our amazing AmeriCorps, is also on, and she's going to be keeping an eye on the chat window and also letting people in. And yeah, let's go ahead and get going. So again, Hopes Harvest Rhode Island Volunteer Orientation 2020. Thank you so much for joining. Again, please mute yourself, enter questions in the chat box. We'll discuss that at the end. We're gonna do a little poll, which we have not tried to do before, so hopefully it goes smoothly. We just wanna get a sense of how many people who are in attendance have gleaned with us in the past. Versus how many people who are on the line are brand new to Hopes Harvest. So Melanie is going to get the poll going, and hopefully it should pop up for you very shortly. And then we'll be able to take a look at the results. So the poll's right there. If you just give it a click, we'll have maybe 1 to 2 minutes for everybody to click on that button, and then we'll see the results. So I'm going to click yes, because I have been on some gleaning trips before. And as everybody's clicking on that, I just want to mention that, you know, we're still sort of figuring out what our process is going to look like for 2020, but we've decided that one thing we're going to do is make this orientation required for everybody who's interested in gleaning with Hopes Harvest this year. So congratulations, you're meeting that requirement right now. And that people will be able to view this again if they have, if they want to view it again, or if people aren't able to attend live, they'll be able to view a recording of this. But we do ask that everybody complete a short quiz at the end. So this is the link to the quiz here, and we'll also give you the quiz at the very end. I sometimes will space out when I'm watching a Zoom call, or I will navigate to other windows. The information that we're presenting on this orientation is super important and has to do with everybody's safety for this season. So we really want to make sure people are focused and paying attention. And so this quiz, it's not a big deal. It's not going to be super hard. It's 4 questions, but we really want to make sure people are focused and paying attention to the information that we're presenting. And once you take that quiz, you're going to get added to an approved 2020 volunteer list. So you will only receive trip invitations this season if you are on that list, and you have to take that quiz to get on that list. So hopefully that's clear. And if folks have questions about that, they can put that in the chat box, and then we can also talk about it during the Q&A period at the end. So, oh, Melanie, do you have the results from the quiz for us?
Okay, I'm gonna end it right now. Actually, yeah, let's end it.
It's a little finicky, this poll technology, so.
Okay, I will go ahead and share the results with you guys so everyone can see.
Okay, so it looks like about 36% of the people who are here have attended a gleaning trip in the past, and 64% have not. So that's actually really exciting. It's great to see a lot of new faces and glad that you're interested in the program. And thank you so much for joining us. And it also means I'm going to feel slightly less bad about repeating some of the things that I've said in previous volunteer orientations. So my apologies to those of you who've seen it before. But usually the way we start out talking about the program and why we exist and why we do what we do is we ask people to envision that they're holding a big, beautiful platter of delicious fresh fruits and vegetables. And this is a picture of yummy fruits and veggies right here, and they're fresh and they came from the farmer's market and they're gorgeous. And now we want people to imagine that you're seeing all of those fruits and vegetables get thrown in the trash. And that's heartbreaking, right? Everybody has sort of a visceral reaction to food waste. Nobody likes to see it happen. And then we also ask people to imagine that you're watching people throw that food out and you haven't eaten anything yet today because you only had enough food in the house to feed your kids. So that's a real issue that a lot of people in Rhode Island are facing. I'm seeing a lot of like weird random lines on the presentation. Is anybody seeing those?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about the formatting. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but why would it go smoothly? There's always got to be something in these. Okay, so food waste and hunger in Rhode Island. Hunger is obviously a serious issue. We know that 1 in 8 individuals, 53,000 households are experiencing food insecurity. So that's a serious problem. And we also know that we're likely to see those challenges increase given the current crisis. So we're seeing a huge short-term increase in food pantry usage. We're seeing changes to distribution protocols and the types of food that are available. So there's less fresh food available at food pantries.
I don't want to interrupt, but we're still on the cover slide. Is that what you want us to be seeing?
No, that is not what I want you to be seeing.
Sorry, I just thought yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to try to start sharing it again and see if that helps. Is that better?
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody let me know if it happens again. Okay. And we'll click back and forth.
Okay.
Okay. So here you see the potential increased need for food pantries. And obviously the people who are being hit the hardest are service workers, people who are already struggling potentially with food insecurity. We're also seeing potential for a recession and then a decrease in donations from restaurants and institutions, which is a real issue as well. All right, I switched slides. Can everybody see the next one? Wonderful.
Yes.
I was telling everybody my computer is like on its way out the door and I have another one coming in the mail literally within the next 4 hours. But of course it didn't come in time for this. So it's still a little buggy and it's like limping along. These are some different scenarios by Feeding America in terms of increased demand, just to give you a sense of the fact that no matter what happens, we're certainly going to see an increase in demand for food from food pantries. Whether it's scenario A, which is not as severe, or scenario C, where the increase goes up by a lot. So we definitely know that there's a need to ensure food security for all of our residents in Rhode Island. Next slide, food waste and hunger in Rhode Island. So this is a great graphic that we like to show, which shows how much food waste is happening at different stages of the food life cycle. So as you can see, a lot happens at the home, but about 16% of food that's wasted is getting wasted at the farm level. And that's a lot. That's about 20 billion pounds of surplus fruits and vegetables nationally. So that's where we operate in this zone over here with the farms. And we don't work with food waste and homes or retail. We're really focused on that food level, on the farm level food waste. Can people see the next slide, the food waste and hunger with the farmer? Okay, so people often wonder why food goes to waste on farms. Farmers spend a lot of their time and resources growing food because they want to feed people, but margins on produce are really tight. So farmers are often selling product and they can't always afford to send people out to harvest food if they're going to donate it, because they maybe have already made their money off of that crop. And every, dollar in labor costs increases the cost of that product. And that means that healthy, fresh, locally grown food can often go to feed pigs or gets composted and tilled into the soil, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but we want to see food go to the highest and best use. And so if it is edible, we want to make sure that it's getting fed to people. And there's some other reasons that surplus happens. So there can also be overproduction, like bumper crops, if the weather's really great, or if things are ugly or they're too big or too small. We work with some experimental farms that are doing research trials on different types of fertilizer use or things like that. And so we'll work with them on harvesting that food. We work with URI on their research farms, if there's good weather, if there's labor shortages. And obviously at this point, we don't know how COVID will impact local surplus availability. And there's a lot of different factors involved in that. And it's a bit of a mystery, but these factors that are on this list will all continue to exist this season, no matter what. Weather will still be an issue, labor shortages, succession planting, things like that. So our mission is to improve the livelihoods of farmers, increase food security for Rhode Island's most vulnerable residents, and get everyone engaged in strengthening the food system by eliminating on-farm food waste in Rhode Island. And how do we do that? Well, we recruit volunteers from the community to rescue surplus food from local farms, and we deliver it to those who need it most. So it's a fairly straightforward model. We did not come up with it. It's been happening for actually thousands of years, but there are many projects across the country that do this type of work. And I am getting a little bit of background noise from somebody. I'm not sure if somebody's not muted, but if you could double check yourself and make sure that you are, that would be great. Thank you. So we're going to go into more detail about how we do that. But first, the who of who's involved. So we have three major sort of stakeholder groups. We work very closely with farmers across the state and also in Massachusetts. You can see a list of them here. This is not comprehensive, but a list of some of the farms that we have worked with in the past. These are the agencies that we distribute food to. So you can see Amos House, Crossroads, the East Bay Food Pantry, Johnny Cake Peacedale, Martin Luther King Center. We get a pretty wide geographic range. We're down in South County, and we try and spread the food and vegetable love as much as we can. And then the other main group of folks that we work with are volunteers, and that's you. And you are essential to making sure that this project works and that we can increase the value of all of our time and efforts by, coming together to recover food. The difference between how much food one person can harvest versus how much food two people can harvest is a lot. And then if you add another person onto that, then you're tripling, right? So every single person that comes makes a huge difference. And every volunteer really dramatically increases the amount of food that we're able to recover and distribute. People often ask where we get our funding and our support. We're fiscally sponsored by Farm Fresh Rhode Island, and we get a lot of funding from the Rhode Island Foundation and the Clenille Foundation, which is based down in Philadelphia, Department of Environmental Management. We have some corporate sponsors and individual gifts as well. So we're mostly grant funded, and that's how we get to do the work that we do. Farm Fresh is an amazing partner to us. They allow us to use their office space, their trucks, and cold storage. And so they've provided a lot of infrastructure that would have made it a lot harder for us to do this work without them. So we're very grateful to them for their partnership and support. So now you're going to get some more of the nitty gritty. This is more the details of how things work. So we get contacted by farms when food becomes available, or we reach out to farmers throughout the growing season and ask them if they have any surplus for us. And we communicate with those farmers about the crop availability, scheduling, the quantity and the quality of the crop, and try and arrange with them to come out to their field. And once we have a trip scheduled, we reach out to volunteers that are on our mailing list through we've recruited them through tabling, through outreach. We have a list now of about 350 registered volunteers. And we send out invitations. We, in general, have done that through Eventbrite. We're hoping to be able to do that through Salesforce this coming growing season. But we let volunteers know when there's going to be trips available. And when volunteers sign up, they get more information about the trip, they arrive, they get trained, harvest, sort, and pack that food on site. And then we're simultaneously also coordinating with the agencies to set up delivery times, make sure that we're delivering food that they'll be able to utilize for their guests. And we're communicating with them about their availability. And then we distribute food either through our trucks or through Farm Fresh Rhode Island's Market Mobile program. So far, we have been able to recruit, as I said, it's now over 350 volunteers, which is largely in part due to the Master Gardener Program partnership that we have this year, which is really exciting. We've had over 120 volunteers come out and spend over 1,400 hours rescuing 115,000 pounds of fresh fruits and vegetables from about 25 different farms, and we've distributed that to 17 hunger relief agencies that serve over 10,000 individuals per month. So that's just a snapshot of what we've been able to accomplish in the last 2 years. Last year, we were up to about 76,000 pounds. Our first year was 36,000 pounds. So I don't think we're hoping to double it this year again, but we do hope that we'll be able to recover about 80,000 pounds of food this year, this growing season. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about joining our network of volunteers and what that actually looks like. So if you are interested in becoming a volunteer, we're going to go through some of the details of that. So we do volunteer registration on our website. So this is the link for our volunteer registration form. And we capture some detailed information: name, address, contact information, emergency contact. We ask about your skills, your experience, your availability, how far you're willing to travel, because this is Rhode Island after all, and we need to know if people will go more than 15 minutes to glean. And we get information that we can organize and use to efficiently assign volunteer roles and really utilize our expanding network. So we've had volunteers support the organization in a lot of different ways, not just gleaning, and it's great to know if there are other skills that are available. And new to this year, as I've said, you need to attend or view the volunteer orientation and complete this quiz to become sort of an approved gleaning volunteer for the season. I just want to mention really quickly, this volunteer registration form does ask for your birth date, which some people feel is a little bit invasive. And I just want to explain why we ask for that. And then we need volunteers to be over a certain age to be able to safely volunteer on farms. And if we only asked what your age was, then that information might potentially expire. So when we ask for a birth date, that information stays steady and constant. If you don't want to give us your actual birth date, one thing that I sometimes do on forms when I'm concerned about privacy is I will put in either the day before or the day after my birthday, just with the year, or, a different day within the same year or something like that. And no one's checking on that, but it's just an administrative tool for us. So that would be super helpful for our purposes. If you don't want to do that, you can get in touch with us and let us know, and we can make other arrangements. So there's registration, and then there's signing up for trips. So we send out event invitations to our MailChimp mailing list. And this year, again, it'll be for approved volunteers only. And we're going to send those out weekly. If you are on our mailing list and you've not completed this orientation, you'll still get updates about the program, but we'll only be sending trip notifications out to the full list. You sign up for specific trips based on your availability. So you're not required to sign up for a trip. There's no commitment to a number of trips or a number of hours for any given season. So I think that's one thing our volunteers really like about this program, is that you're not committing to every Thursday between 2 and 7 p.m. You can come on trips when you're available, and if you're not available, you don't have to come. And then we just collect some basic information when you sign up: your name, your email, your phone number, so we can contact you if the trip gets canceled or if there's any issues. We do a media and liability waiver. You need to sign the liability waiver. You are not required to sign the media waiver. And then this year we will have a COVID agreement that will have just a basic outline of our policies for volunteering during the COVID-19 crisis. And we're going to go over those in a lot of depth in a moment. These are the different volunteer roles that we have. So there's gleaners, which is sort of our core volunteering opportunity. We also have outreach ambassadors, drivers, and who also do like deliveries for us, and then trip leaders, which is new as of last year and this year a little bit. And again, we'll go into depth on all of these right now. So Harvest and Rescue volunteers are core helpers. Register on the website, as I said, and then attend this volunteer orientation and take the quiz. Receive email updates of upcoming trips, select which event to sign up for, complete the media liability and COVID waivers, receive detailed information about farm location in your trip confirmation. So we don't send out the location of the trip until you have actually registered and signed those waivers, because we don't want folks who have not completed the waiver to show up at the farm. And that's really important because we have committed to the farmers that we are making sure everyone who is on their farm is fully covered and they're not taking on any extra liability or risk. So we take that very seriously. And then when you get that trip confirmation, you're also getting information about, what sort of equipment you need to bring, if any, if we're all wearing rain boots that day because it's going to be wet, any sort of details about the trip itself, where we'll be meeting in the parking lot and that kind of thing. You join Hope's Harvest and other volunteers on the farm for about 1 to 3 hours. So we don't go for longer than that because we know that, if you're not a farmer, it's tough work, and we don't expect that people are going to be able to do a full 8-hour day out in the field. So we keep our trips pretty short, and we make sure that we have enough volunteers on site to get the work done in that time frame. On site, we provide training 10 minutes before the start of each trip. So we do farm and proper harvesting techniques. We learn about the farm. We do personal and food safety training. We talk about product quality. And then this year, this will probably take longer than 10 minutes because we're going to go over our additional safety protocols that we'll have in the field, and make sure that everybody's clear and has gotten this training. And then we go out and we get our hands dirty and we harvest and we pack the food up, and then Hope's Harvest brings it to our sites. Benefits to being a gleaner: obviously you get some fresh air, you get to be outside, you get to see farms that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see otherwise, which is really nice. You get some exercise, get to meet other volunteers. It's very social what we do, and that's a really lovely part of it. We're hoping that even with our new safety protocols, we'll still be able to connect with each other in the ways that we have been able to in the past. And then obviously making a difference for people in need is really important, and a big part of why everybody comes out. And it's a really tangible way to see the difference that you're making, because you've got that bin of carrots in your hands and you know that it's going to people who can really use it. All right. So here's kind of the meat for this part of the training, the changes that we're making based on COVID and how we're adapting. And I'll talk a little bit more about our sources at the very end, but we've been doing a lot of research, doing a lot of reading, participating in a lot of webinars and things to make sure that we're putting in place policies that are going to keep everybody safe. And I just want to preface this by saying that everybody's learning and we're all figuring this out. And so we're trying to go a little overboard at the beginning. At least we want to be more cautious than less cautious. And then if it turns out that we're overdoing it, then, later on in the season, we can scale back as needed. And a lot of these policies are going to have to adapt and change based on different guidance and guidelines that we get from the state and any other agencies. So the first thing we're doing is requiring this orientation and pre-approval, which is not something that we've done in the past, but we really want to make sure that people fully understand all these protocols and that they are indicating that they've received the information. We'll be doing pre-screening during trip signups and on-site. So we will ask some basic questions if anybody's been experiencing symptoms, if they've had travel, if they have anyone in their household who's experiencing symptoms, and we'll ask people not to participate in trips if that's the case. Volunteers will need to bring their own masks and face shields or face shields potentially. We got a great suggestion recently from a volunteer saying that masks might be an issue in terms of heat out cleaning with, it gets really humid out there, it might be damp, and that face shields might actually be better. And we may be able to provide some of these for folks, but we're also aware that people have their own and might be more comfortable with that. People will have to bring their own water bottle and personal supplies. We used to share sunscreen, bug spray, and things like that. And we won't be able to do that because we just don't want to be, cross-contaminating and handing things to people. And then any equipment that people bring from home, particularly gloves, we'll need to know that they've been cleaned and sanitized before they come out onto the farm because we'll be handling food. Our preference is, so on site, we'll do a safety procedures review at each trip. Hand washing will be required, and we will have hand washing stations available. And that's something we did anyway, but we received funding to get even more sort of more formal hand washing stations that have, foot pumps for water and things like that. So we'll be doing that. We will have disposable gloves available. Based on our review and our discussion with URI, food safety, gloves are not recommended. Gloves often make people feel safer and more able to touch their faces or touch other things. And then they think because they're wearing gloves that the gloves can't transmit bacteria or viruses. And so research has shown that it's actually better for people to practice regular hand washing. But we will have gloves in case of, people's comfort level, or if anyone gets injured and needs to cover up a Band-Aid or something like that, we'll have gloves for that. And we will be practicing social distancing in the field. In some ways, volunteering for Hope's Harvest is more amenable to social distancing than some other types of volunteering because there's often quite a bit of space in the field. But in terms of our trainings, loading the truck, staff will be on site to manage and monitor, ensuring that everybody keeps a good distance. We'll be marking off spaces and keeping people at a distance. According to the next bullet, which is no volunteers in Hope's Harvest Rhode Island vehicles or other Gleaners vehicles. So in the past, we would have volunteers help us load the truck. We will not be doing that this year. No volunteers will be able to come closer to the truck. And there were times when we would sometimes share rides out to different fields. If we would get to the parking lot and then we'd have to go to a different field, we would hop in each other's vehicles, and we will not be allowing that this year. So we'll manage that logistically in other ways. There will be no sharing of equipment. Everyone will get their own equipment when they show up on site that has been sterilized in between each trip. And you'll hold on to that equipment through the duration of the event. And then we will be doing our best to pack and bunch product in the field. So again, in the past, we were, we'd pick kale and we'd just put all the kale loose into one bin, and then we'd let the pantries sort it out when they got it from us. We're going to try and help the pantries and be better partners to them by packing things for individual or household level distribution. And that means we might be packing things in the field ourselves. And I just want to say that we take this all really seriously. We're going to be doing our best, and we really need volunteers to follow these protocols. So if we do have any volunteers on site who are not able to follow them or who are choosing not to follow them, obviously we'll remind people, and we know that there's a lot to keep in mind, and we'll make sure that we're, letting people know what the rules are. But if they're not being followed, we do reserve the right to ask people not to glean with us during that trip and during subsequent trips. So I hope people are putting questions in the chat. I'm not keeping an eye on that, but if you do have anything that is coming into your mind or you're thinking about, I know I'm talking at everybody a lot, and I want us to be able to have a good discussion after this. So please do continue to put any questions or thoughts in the chat window. I just want to highlight the pre-screening questions that we're going to have. We'll be asking if folks have traveled to a foreign country in the past 14 days, travel to any state outside of Rhode Island. That's a little tricky. We do know that some people live in Massachusetts or work in Massachusetts, and we'll discuss that in more depth. been on a cruise ship or in an airport, been around anyone who has tested positive for or exhibited symptoms of COVID, been to an event where more than 5 people were in attendance, or experienced any of the symptoms of COVID. So those are the pre-screening questions that we'll be asking. And we as staff will also be asking these questions of the farms, and screening both the farms and the agencies to make sure that if there are any staff that have been identified on the farms and things like that. So that's part of our internal process, which I'll discuss a little bit more later. So this is our other type of volunteer, just for folks who are, who have been outreach volunteers in the past. And we had a lot of folks who would come out and table for us, which was really awesome. And we really love that. And these were just the basic requirements for that, registering on our website. We would train you and show you where all the equipment was and things like that. It looks like this year, oh, and there's great benefits to being able to do that. You get to be out in the community and meet new people. This year, I think it's less likely that we'll be doing a lot of outreach stuff. A lot of in-person events have been canceled. Farmers markets are not having community groups, sometimes because they don't want the market to be some place that people are congregating. So I think, everyone who is on this call can be an outreach ambassador in their own way. You can tell your friends about Hope's Harvest. You can talk about it on social media, share photos of you doing this work. And we're totally open to suggestions about this. I think, we've been very lucky to get a lot of great media attention. We're working with Master Gardeners this year. It feels like the word is out, and word of mouth really is the best way to get people involved. And I think when they hear about it from somebody that, they're friends with or a family member, they're more likely to want to participate. So drivers, we had some volunteers last year who were driving. They would pick up small amounts of product for us and then move food from, local farms to the closest agency. And that's something we really would like to be able to continue to do, but we, and we know that it allowed for more involvement, more relationships and connection to the community and direct experience of the benefits to recipients. It's nice to see where the food is going. That said, this year we're gonna do pre-approval from Hope's Harvest staff, which was the requirement of this before, but we'll have additional vehicle safety protocols and inspections, require protective equipment, and we'll have no contact drop-offs. So we do have guidance for that. So if folks are interested in being able to do that, it's potentially an option, but that's one of those scenarios that we're trying to figure out what the best way forward is. And, we have some ideas about what that looks like, but it may evolve as the season progresses. Trip leaders is something we had a few volunteers doing last year, and we're going to be training Master Gardeners to do this year. And we would like people to be able to lead trips. I think this is definitely sort of advanced topics in gleaning. So if you're new, you really don't have to worry about this. But if you do decide that you love gleaning so much that you want to be a trip leader, we would do in-person trainings about that. And you'd have to do a trip with a Hope's Harvest staff member. You'd have to receive approval from us, and there's various requirements for that as well. But it is a really nice opportunity. You get to connect and have a more direct experience of the benefits. Master Gardeners can receive volunteer hours for that, which is great. And obviously you increase our capacity to be able to move more food in the community. But we do think this will be limited significantly in 2020. We're expanding our staff a little bit this season. So we will have a few AmeriCorps helpers, and then we're also hiring a part-time harvest crew to be able to come out in the field with us. So we're hoping that we will have as much capacity as possible. And again, Master Gardeners will be participating in this, which we're really grateful for. So I just want to talk a little bit about our sort of internal response to COVID and how we're doing things on the back end. This is some of the stuff that we're thinking about. So we're doing more site screening of farms and agencies, as I mentioned earlier, talking to them about what's happening on their field. And, if they have staff that have been affected, or if they're doing any specific protocols that we need to follow. We're screening our own staff, and we're doing a lot of retraining this season, training on our updated safety protocols, and also making sure that our staff is really, really clear on all of these different procedures. We are going to be doing at least 2 staff people per trip, no matter what. So last season we would have between 1 and 2 staff people per trip. We feel like with the extra cleaning and with the extra social distancing and managing loading the truck, it's really important for us to have at least 2 staff people per trip to make sure that we're following all the protocols that we need to, and keeping everybody safe, so that we can keep an eye on all of that. We will be doing, as I've just been going through more volunteer screening and training, we'll be looking at parking and keeping distance in parking lots. That's from guidance from the Department of Environmental Management on UPIC. So making sure that there's enough space in parking lots, and then spacing in the fields. We'll have at least 6 feet between pickers. And we'll have different ways to manage that and making sure that's happening. And like I said, most of the fields that we're in, there's plenty of room, so people will sort of be assigned a section, and we'll pick within that section, and then we can rotate folks. In terms of people harvesting and bringing their product back to the truck, we will set up specific workflows for distancing, so no one has to be too close to each other when they get to the truck. They'll be leaving things at tables that are at a distance from the truck, and then staff will be bringing that product into the truck itself. We will be limiting the number of staff and volunteers allowed on trips. So it used to be that we were sort of making a calculation about how much product we needed to harvest and how many volunteers we needed to do that. Our calculations will change this year based on the space that's available, and making sure everyone can keep sufficient distance. And so that might mean we have to limit the number of trips we go on, limit the number of volunteers, or limit the amount of product that we're able to recover in the allocated time. We will definitely have hand washing stations. I mentioned that. We will be sanitizing all of the equipment in between trips, tools, vehicles, gloves, masks, the truck itself, all of that will be getting sanitized. We will not be sharing equipment, as I said. Masks or face shields will be required of staff and everyone who's participating out in the field. We're going to have some expanded record keeping for traceability, so we'll make sure we know exactly who was at every trip, and we'll make sure that we know where we were on what dates, and that's a lot of stuff that we track anyway, but we'll be also doing temperature logs and cleaning logs and staff training logs, and there's going to be a lot of logs. We're doing a lot of laminating this week and putting things in binders, so if binders make you feel safe, I find a lot of security in a binder. So yeah, we're making sure that we're keeping track of all that. I think what it does mean, and what we want to be realistic about, is that we may see, the more time we spend on this, the less time we spend picking food. And so I think we have to be realistic about what, and it may decrease from last year. And that is, it's not ideal, but the most important thing is everybody's safety. And we just want to make sure we're able to meet the needs of, again, all of the people who are engaging with this program. So the farmers, the agencies, and all of you. And that's our primary responsibility. And then we'll have, different storage and transportation policies in terms of deliveries. And we're going to try and limit the number of people who touch the food. We'll try and do direct deliveries as much as possible, so that we're not keeping things, in transit for any longer than they need to be. I just want to let you all know, again, some of the sources and where we've been getting this information. So Association of Gleaning Organizations is a national organization that I'm a part of, that's been having some webinars and calls, and also has some resources that they've been hosting in terms of what other gleaning projects across the country are doing. And I think it's really helpful because there are projects that are in the South that are currently gleaning right now. And so it did not occur to me that mask wearing in 90-degree weather would be an issue, because it's not been 90 degrees here for a very long time. It's very intuitive when you think about it, but that's something that's coming up for folks in Florida right now is how long can they actually reasonably be out in the field with masks on? You know, we're looking at the possibility that we may need to cancel trips if it gets too hot or too humid, and we just won't be able to go out because we won't be able to safely do that without masks. So just that's the learning that we're doing with these other projects, and being able to understand what the parameters are. As I had mentioned, the Department of Environmental Management had some pick your own guidance, which they released, which I think is the most relevant in terms of all of the guidance, because it involves having the general public out on farms. And so we've relied heavily on that, and we really are very grateful for our state agencies who are doing a lot of the hard work of figuring out what is and is not safe practice and protocol. We've had all of our food safety materials reviewed by URI and the Department of Environmental Management, and we've been working closely with the Master Gardener program in terms of making sure that we're following safety protocols that meet their standards as well. We work closely with the Boston Area Gleaners. They're an important partner of ours, and they are often ahead of the game in terms of a lot of their food safety work. And so we do a lot of sort of peer resource sharing with them, with Salvation Farms in Vermont. We've looked to the CDC for hand washing and sanitizing. Farm Fresh Rhode Island has their internal protocols around their pack house and storage. University of Vermont has done a lot of work on workflows on farms in terms of packing and washing and things like that. The FDA, the EPA, and then our own Hope's Harvest food safety plan has quite a lot of detail and information about how we keep food safe. And a lot of that has been very relevant to this process. So, you know, it's something that was top of mind before, and it's nice to know that some of the thought that we've put into this is relevant to this particular moment and crisis that we're having right now. So next steps, the recording and slides will be available on our website. So I probably should have mentioned that earlier. Hopefully nobody was taking copious notes. You will be able to view these slides, and all the links will be live and active, so you can click on any of those. Once we're done with this, you should go and complete the quiz. Here's the address for the quiz. To be added to our approved 2020 volunteers list. Again, it's not a super scary quiz. We really just want to know that people were paying attention and listening, and we want to have a record and a log of who's been able to attend this. If you want to view the slides or view the recording, again, you're welcome to do that. And yeah, and when you take that quiz, we'll have a record of your name and your email address, and then we'll add you to that approved list. We recently sent out a volunteer survey, which was asking volunteers about their sort of feelings about safety and volunteering, and asking for suggestions. We really believe strongly in the power of this community and the sort of richness of experience and ideas. So I know we're going to have a really great conversation as soon as I stop talking at everybody and finish up with these slides. But this is another opportunity if you'd like to submit any thoughts that you have or feedback about these different strategies or other strategies that you think we could implement on the site. We really value your insight and your wisdom, and would invite you to complete that survey. And I guess I just want to say again, you know, we're all sort of figuring this out. We're doing our best. We're trying to be as comprehensive as we can. And this is unprecedented. We've never done this before. We've not tried to do this before. And so we hope that you'll bear with us, and that everyone can be sort of gentle and patient with each other as we try and work through some of these processes and figure out the best way to move forward. And, you know, ultimately it's all in service to making sure that we have a stable and safe food supply that's going to people in need, and that we're meeting that need. And I think that Hope's Harvest is really unique and special in that we are able to make a really concrete and tangible difference for people. And we want to be able to keep doing that as much as possible this season, because we know that you know, it's really important. It's really important to take care of our neighbors. So thank you all so much for being part of this process and for your interest in participating. And I think gleaning trips will likely start either June or early July. We really want to make sure that we have everything locked down as much as possible before we try and bring volunteers out. So be patient, and we'll keep you updated on how things are moving forward. And then I just had this amazing nugget of wisdom from someone this morning who said, limitations define focused energy. And I thought that was so valuable and a really great way to think about this. You know, we are coming up against some limits, and what that allows us to do is really figure out what is the most important thing that we need to be doing, and how to focus on that, and how to focus our energy on making sure that we're meeting our mission and goals. So thanks again, and I'm gonna stop screen sharing now, and we can take some questions. Melanie, I don't know if you've been keeping an eye on the questions or if I should just start going through.
Yeah, I can read you some of the questions. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so one question is on carpooling. Could we share vehicles with friends or people we are comfortable with, roommates, question mark?
Yeah, so I've been hearing it described as like a pod. You know, if you have roommates and people that you're living with already, that you're already exposed to, that are part of your household, absolutely, by all means, share cars with them. I'm not going to tell you who to like drive with in a car to a gleaning trip. You know, what we assume is that people are exercising caution and are being really thoughtful in their lives, and are not, you know, sort of unnecessarily exposing themselves. So it's really just, we don't want to put people at additional risk by participating with Hope's Harvest. So we're not going to ask anybody to get close to anybody that they wouldn't be getting close to otherwise. And I do see a question here about how much of the produce harvested by Hope's Harvest goes to waste, which is a really interesting question. And Melanie could tell you some stories about some really gross eggplant last year. But in general, we actually do a pretty good job of, at least on our end, we distribute almost all of, like I would say 99.5% of all the produce that we recover, we distribute out to a food pantry. Once it gets to the pantry, they distribute things pretty quickly as well. From what we know anecdotally, they don't have a hard time moving the product that we bring them. Unless it's teeny tiny apples. Sometimes they don't really like the teeny tiny apples. But I think what you saw in the original chart, once it gets to the household level, that's something that we don't really have a lot of say over. And we don't have any really good way of measuring that. But we do know that on our end, we really don't recover food unless we know we have a place to bring it. And we are, you know, we're very confident in what we hear from the pantries that they're able to distribute it all.
So there's another question about our Eventbrite. It says, what kind of info comes on the Eventbrite, if not the location of the farm general area, question mark, work description, question mark?
Sorry, I'm going to try and look at that. What kind of info comes on the invite, if not the location of the farm general area, work description? Great. Yeah, so usually what we put in the description for the event is the general geographic region. So we will say like, it's going to be in Scituate, or it's going to be in Seekonk, or it'll be in Charlestown. So we give you like the town, so you know where it is. The crop that we'll be harvesting. So if it's lettuce or corn, so you have a sense of what the weight looks like on our bins and things like that, which we feel like is important. And sometimes, you know, we'll say, oh, it's going to be a rainy one, or yeah, I think those are the main things that we put on there, just on the invitation, and the date and the time, obviously, as well. And then in terms of the confirmation, that's when you get the more specific information. I want to make sure I'm getting the ones up here. Suggestions on how to sanitize gloves from home. So if you put things through the washing machine and a nice hot dryer, that's considered sufficient to clean things. The question is, you know, if it's been riding in your car, if you're wearing the gloves like while you're eating in your car or driving or going to the gas station or things like that. So we really want you to like clean them, keep them, you know, in a bag, and then really not pull them out until you get to the farm.
I think I'm sending you a few of the questions.
Okay, I'm seeing someone said they registered as a volunteer last year and wants to know if they have to register again for this year. So once you've registered, you do not have to register again. You should be fine. We have all your information. What you do have to do is take the quiz to show us that you did this volunteer orientation. And that's the only thing that you have to do that's different this year. How are volunteers protected from pesticides used on farms? Great question. So we work with organic and non-organic farms. And the farmers, after they spray, usually will mark a field to say that it's not safe to go into. And they, you know, they don't invite us to go glean on fields that have been sprayed. But we don't claim that the farms that we're working on are like fully organic. That is information that you can request. You know, if you see like an event invitation, you're like, I wonder if that's an organic farm or not. You can certainly ask us and we'll let you know. But even organic farms also do, they do spray pesticides. They're just organic certified pesticides. So, you know, they're all, once they've sprayed, they're making sure that people aren't going out into fields that have been sprayed. But if it's something you're not comfortable with, then, you know, that's not something that we can, like we can't ensure that you're going to be somewhere where there's like never been a pesticide sprayed ever. Okay. So another question, do you anticipate that farmers will be increasing their crops in light of the increased demands for food? I have been at farmers markets recently and they seem busier than ever. Yeah, so the supply question is a big one that a lot of people are asking, and I think it's up in the air. So my understanding is that CSAs are doing very well right now. Lots of people are signing up for CSAs because they just want to make sure that they're going to have access to fresh fruits and veggies all season long. And a lot of CSAs are sold out at this point. Which, you know, we love to see that because that's really great for farms and farmers. It's great that the farmers markets are busy. And I think that, you know, farmers are making their own planting decisions right now. I don't know that anyone is anticipating that the price of food will be going down anytime soon. And I've heard that, you know, the farmers who are smaller and more flexible are able to make decisions kind of on the fly. Are really being very adaptive to what's happening and the shifting in demand away from restaurants towards individuals and things like that. So that's good for our local farms. And I think that we will still continue to see surplus based on the fact that the factors we are dealing with are always going to continue to be part of the picture. So weather, pest pressure, labor, all that is still gonna be true. So, and yeah, Marita, thank you for asking. Just to clarify, we did talk about gloves, but gloves are not necessary to come out on a trip. And again, we really think that people are better at being conscious of hand washing and making sure that they're using best practices when they are not wearing gloves, because again, if you touch your face or if you eat or drink, which we are recommending people do not bring snacks to gleaning trips this season, because we really don't want people coming out and eating on the field, because that again, you know, brings your hands up close to your face, and then you potentially have more opportunities for cross-contamination. Another question. If you have a bad back, are there still ways to help with the gleaning? Thank you for asking that question. I would suggest that you pay attention to what we will be gleaning. So if we're doing kale, for example, those bins are usually between 15 and 20 pounds, which is on the lighter side of what we do. We don't load bins any heavier than 40 pounds. And we did, used to do a lot of team lifting to make sure that people weren't lifting over their comfort level. And I think that might change, and we might be doing just smaller loads or not as heavier bins so people can lift individual things. There's a lot of bending over in the field when you're harvesting. You know, if it's not corn, then you're doing green beans, you might be bent over, and that can be a little bit difficult. So it is sort of physically taxing work. But I think it's just sort of a matter of taking a look at what it is we'll be harvesting and trying it out. But we never, ever, ever want anyone to do anything that they feel physically uncomfortable with. And we really want people to, you know, that's part of the training that we do on site prior to the beginning of the trip, is we ask people to just be aware of their own physical limitations and sort of be responsible for that, and not do things they don't feel comfortable doing. For COVID screening, if you've been out of state, does that disqualify you for gleaning? That is a very good question. Again, we're a small state and there's a lot of travel to Connecticut or Massachusetts. I think we need to take that on a case-by-case basis. If you have been traveling to like New York or Florida or California, or you've been on an airplane, I think that's where we start to get into real risk. So I think that we would need to look at that one-on-one, because we really just don't want to have people who've been traveling sort of long distances or been on you know, public forms of transportation. But that is 14 days. So that's a 14-day window. But yeah, I mean, you know, my husband works in Massachusetts and he travels out of state every week. And, you know, we're not quarantining him for, you know, 14 full days because of that. So, all right, next question. If you're not able to carry heavy bins longer distances, can you fill bins for someone else to carry? Yes, you can. And that's a great question and a great way of thinking about that. But what we do want to do, again, is make sure that we're keeping that distance. So if people are filling bins, then they would have to sort of let somebody know that the bin is ready, walk away from the bin, and then wait for somebody else to carry the bin. So I think that's some of the stuff that we're going to be working out on site, and just figuring out what that looks like in practice, because I think, you know, we can do our best to try and address all eventualities on paper, but until we actually get out in the field. And I think we're just going to have to take it really slow and take it really careful and make sure everybody's being really thoughtful and conscientious, and, you know, that we're not rushing and we have plenty of staff and we have plenty of time, and that we're just all being just really aware. You do not have to create a Bitly account to take the quiz. We have a Bitly account to make shorter links, but if you just click on that link, you should be able to go right to the quiz. If somebody tries to click on the quiz link and it's not working for them, definitely let us know. And we'll get out.
Eva, and it's making me set up an account.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So we'll look into that. And Melanie, do you want to take a look at that and figure out what's going on with the link? And then we can put an updated link in the chat window.
I used the link in the chat and it went fine. I didn't
Oh,
have
it did?
an account.
I'll look into it, but as of now, it looks like it's functioning okay. Maybe I'll send it directly to you. Yeah, I'll send it real quick.
Oh, someone said it doesn't do that if you use the link in the chat window. So yeah, Melanie had shared the link a little bit further up. But yeah, you should not have to create an account. You should be able to just access it. And we're also going to be linking to the quiz on the website. So if you go to the link on our website that has this that will have the recording of this event up there, the quiz link will also be there. Okay. Yeah. Does anyone else have other questions or thoughts, or if you want to unmute yourself or anything at this point, we can continue on. I know we're supposed to go to 4:30, but I don't think anyone would be mad if we finished early. We just didn't know how long this was going to take, and we wanted to just give plenty of space and time for people to, you know, ask questions, let us know what their thoughts are, and make sure everyone's clear on what the policies are. So. Okay, question. One challenge is making sure everyone stays hydrated. Yes, so important. Will we be making sure that people have brought their own water as part of the initial screening? And are there rules and advice on how to drink while wearing masks? Thank you so much for asking that, Derek. So what we're thinking is that we would like everybody to bring their own water bottles. We don't want to have to have everybody touching the water dispenser. We will have water there for staff, and if it's, you know, an emergency, we'll definitely, you know, we're not gonna like let people pass out from dehydration. But we really want people to be thoughtful about what they're bringing with them, and that they're, you know, we'll have wipes if people wanna wipe things down, so they're not gonna have their water bottle out there next to the tote with them in the field. If you are wearing gloves and you go and touch your water bottle or you touch your cell phone or something like that, you'd have to change your gloves before going back and touching the food. Or you would have to wash your hands before going back and touching the food. And it, you know, there's also differentiation between specific types of food. So, you know, in our regular food safety protocols, there's a difference between food that's going to be eaten as is, so things like lettuce, versus food that's going to be cooked. So we're less concerned about things like butternut squash because no one's eating raw butternut squash, but we really want to make sure that we're just being really thoughtful about, you know, the potential ways that viruses can get transferred between objects. So, you know, under normal circumstances, our food safety policy is that we don't want people eating and then going back out and touching food after they've eaten without washing their hands. And that's best practice in any type of food service environment, is that if you're eating or drinking, you wash your hands before you go back to work. So, I do want to let everybody know, and I'm really curious and I'm sort of excited that we have been partnering as we speak with the City of Providence Sustainability Fair. So thanks to everybody who found out about this through that. And in the chat, you can see from Emily, who's with the City of Providence, that the we're currently part of the virtual Sustain PVD Fair, and this is the first day, and there's a ton of virtual events that are happening throughout the week. So if you do go to the Sustain PVD schedule, which is in the chat window, there's a link to that. You can attend a lot of those other events, and there's all kinds of neat stuff to learn more about, and you know, stay sort of engaged in your community in some of these efforts around trying to make a difference for our communities. Anything else I should be saying about the Sustain PVD Fair, Melanie? Or Emily?
I put the link in the chat room in case anyone has not seen that yet. That link has the schedule to all the events throughout the week.
Perfect. Thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, we're really excited to be partnering with that that effort, and so so neat to see how creative they're being about making sure that we can still engage with each other around issues of sustainability. Okay, another question. On some trips, volunteers would be able to take home gleaned vegetables. Will that change this year? If we are following all of the safety protocols that we've been following, there shouldn't be an issue with being able to take home gleaned food. Really, and that's something that has always been optional and always been something that is based on the trip leader's assessment of whether we've been able to harvest enough and if there's sufficient surplus available for volunteers to take some home. So that's not always a guarantee, but it is something that does happen sometimes, and we do think that that should continue to be able to happen safely as long as everyone's following their safety protocols. Any other questions, thoughts, opinions, dreams, hopes? It's so great to see everybody. Thank you for being part of this. And again, we'll be able to share this information with your friends, share the links with your friends if they want to get involved as well. And like I said, it's a bit of a mystery this year. We're not totally sure what things are going to look like, but we're going to do our absolute best to make sure that we're taking care of everybody and still able to do our work. So we're very grateful for all of you who are in this to support this and to participate. And please do get in touch with us if you have any questions, info@hopesharvest.org. And yeah, keep putting comments or questions in the chat, but we can wrap it up if folks feel like they got everything they needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Melanie.
All right, I'm going to end the meeting, okay?
Okay.